Jack Carter always liked fixing things. He had been good at it ever since he was a kid. When something broke, he wanted to see how it worked inside. As a young man, he built his own little robots from old parts. Now Jack worked as an engineer on a spaceship named Pioneer. He kept the ship running and safe for the crew. He liked his job. Every day brought something new to learn or fix. The Pioneer was on a long journey far from Earth. The crew was made up of people from many countries, but everyone spoke the same language and helped each other. Captain Emma Blake was the leader. Of the ship, she was strict but fair. She always looked out for her crew, and everyone trusted her. Jack respected her a lot. One morning, as the ship moved through empty space, the crew gathered in the control room. The room was quiet except for the gentle hum of the engines. Everyone was looking at the screen in the center. The screen showed a strange purple cloud in space. It looked like a wall made out of smoke and lightning. This was the place the aliens called the Great Gap. Jack watched as the crew whispered to each other. Everyone had heard the stories about the gap. The aliens said it was cursed. Some said that ships who entered the gap were never seen again. Even the bravest alien captains refused to go near it. There were many stories, but no one knew what was really inside. The only thing everyone agreed on was that it was dangerous. Captain Emma stood in front of the crew and spoke in a calm voice. She explained that their mission was to explore new places, but they would not be going into the gap. Their orders were to study it from a safe distance and collect information. She told everyone to be careful and to follow all safety rules. Jack was curious about the gap. He listened to the stories, but he wanted to see the truth for himself. He liked a challenge. Whenever someone said something could not be done, he wanted to prove them wrong. After the meeting, he went back to his work, but he kept thinking about the gap. For the next few days, the crew used their machines to scan the gap. They measured the strange energy waves and took pictures. The gap was even bigger and stranger than anyone thought. Sometimes the cloud changed color. Sometimes it sent out flashes of bright light. The readings were confusing. Nothing made sense. Jack spent long hours checking the equipment to make sure it was working. He even stayed late in the control room after everyone else left, looking at the data and thinking. One night, as Jack walked down the quiet hallway, he met his friend Rachel. She was a pilot and liked to joke around with him. She asked him why he looked so serious. Jack told her he was thinking about the gap. He said he wanted to know what was inside. Rachel laughed and said he was crazy. No one wanted to go in there. Jack smiled, but he did not forget the idea. That night, Jack could not sleep. He lay in his small cabin and stared at the ceiling. He thought about all the things that could be hiding inside the gap. Maybe there were lost ships? Maybe there were strange new worlds? Or maybe there was nothing but danger. Jack felt a mix of fear and excitement. The next day, as he worked in the engine room, the ship's sensors went off. A warning light flashed. On the wall, Jack hurried to the control room. The crew was already there, looking worried. The sensors had picked up a strange signal coming from deep inside the gap. It was not a natural sound. It was a pattern like a voice calling for help. The signal was weak, but it repeated over and over. Captain Emma told everyone to stay calm. She ordered the crew to record the signal and try to learn more. Jack listened closely. He could hear the faint sound through the speakers. It was almost like someone was trying to speak, but the words were hidden by noise. The crew worked for hours, trying to make the message clear. As night came, most of the crew left for dinner. Jack stayed behind, still listening to the strange signal. He played with the controls, trying to remove the noise. After a while, he thought he heard a word. It was not English. It was not a human voice. Jack realized it might be an alien calling for help. His heart beat faster. He knew he had to do something. Jack went to Captain Emma's office and told her his idea. He wanted to take a small shuttle and go closer to the gap. He thought maybe he could find out who was sending the signal. Emma shook her head. She said it was too dangerous. She could not risk anyone's life for a signal they did not understand. She told Jack to forget it and go back to his work. Jack tried to follow her order, but he could not stop thinking about the signal. All night he planned in his mind. He knew how to prepare a shuttle for the journey. He would take extra supplies and fix the engine to handle the strange energies. He made a list of everything he needed. By the next morning, he had made up his mind. Jack waited until the middle of the night, when most of the crew was asleep. He sneaked into the hangar and started working on a small shuttle. He checked the engine, loaded food and water, and made sure the radio was working. He wrote a note to Captain Emma, saying he was sorry, but he had to do this. He left the note on her desk. Jack put on his suit and climbed into the shuttle. His hands shook as he started the engine. He took a deep breath and looked at the control panel. He knew this might be his last trip. He thought about his family on Earth, about his friends on the Pioneer, about Rachel's jokes and Captain Emma's kind words. He was scared, but he was ready. He turned on the radio and spoke into the mic. He said goodbye to the Pioneer and promised to come back. He set the course for the edge of the gap. The shuttle moved away from the big ship, and Jack watched as the stars faded behind him. The gap was ahead, bigger and darker than ever. As he got closer, the cloud grew brighter and the shuttle shook from the energy waves. The controls beeped. Warnings, but Jack kept going. He thought about all the aliens who had refused to try this. He wondered what made humans different. Maybe it was hope, or maybe it was just curiosity. When he reached the very edge, Jack slowed the shuttle. He closed his eyes for a moment and tried to calm his mind. He remembered all the stories he had heard and all the things that could go wrong, but he also thought about the voice calling for help. He could not turn back now. With his heart pounding, Jack shut his eyes, pressed the button, and jumped into the gap. The shuttle shook and the world outside turned wild. Lights flashed, colors twisted, and the shuttle spun in the strange energy. Storm. Jack held on to the controls as the shuttle flew deeper into the unknown. He felt afraid, but he refused to let go. For a few moments, it felt like he was falling forever. Then just as suddenly as it began, the shaking stopped. The shuttle floated quietly, surrounded by strange colors and soft light. Jack opened his eyes and looked around. He was inside the gap. He checked the shuttle's controls. The engines were working, but just barely. He tried the radio, but there was only static. Jack realized he was alone, farther from home than he had ever been. He looked out the window and saw shapes moving in the mist. He did not know if they were real or just tricks of his mind. The signal was still there, louder now. Jack knew his journey had only just begun. Jack sat in the small shuttle, trying to understand what had just happened. He floated inside the strange area called the Gap. Outside his window, lights moved like slow rivers and strange shapes drifted by. It did not look like any part of space he had seen before. The controls blinked with warning lights, but nothing was broken yet. The shuttle was shaking a little, but Jack felt thankful that it was still working. He looked at the radio. It made only static, but the signal he heard before was louder now. Jack felt nervous, but also curious. He thought again about the voice that had called for help. Maybe someone really needed him here? He decided to follow the signal and see where it would lead. Jack his supplies. He had food and water for several days. His oxygen was fine for now. He turned on the small thrusters and started moving in the direction of the signal. The energy waves around the shuttle grew stronger, making the ship shake. Jack held the controls tightly and focused on the numbers on his screen. As he moved deeper, the lights outside changed color from purple to blue, then to a bright white. Jack stared out the window and saw strange objects floating in the distance. They looked like pieces of old ships, maybe from others who tried to cross the gap and failed. Some looked human, but others were alien designs he had never seen before. Jack moved closer to the biggest piece. He saw marks that looked like burn marks and deep cuts from impacts. He wondered what could do so much damage. The answer was probably the wild energy storms, but Jack knew he had to be careful. Suddenly, the radio made a different sound. Instead of static, he heard a small, weak voice. It was not English, but Jack listened carefully. The voice sounded scared and tired. He thought he could hear the same word over and over. Jack tried to answer, speaking slowly and gently, hoping the other person could understand him. The voice answered again. this time a little clearer. Jack realized it belonged to a young alien, maybe a girl. She spoke in short words. Jack guessed. She was saying she needed help. Jack felt a strong need to find her fast. He used the signal tracker to move toward the source. The shuttle floated through more broken ships. Some looked very old, almost like they had been there for hundreds of years. Jack wondered how many others had tried to cross the gap and never returned. The signal led Jack to a small silver ship, half buried in a cloud of bright light. It was clear the ship was badly damaged. One wing was missing and the engine looked burned. Jack brought his shuttle as close as he could and turned on the lights. He saw a window on the other ship and looked inside. Through the glass, he saw a girl with light purple skin and big blue eyes. She looked weak and scared. Jack waved at her. She tried to wave back, but her hand shook. Jack quickly put on his spacesuit and grabbed a small tool bag. He opened the airlock, connected a safety line, and floated out toward the alien ship. The air around the ship was cold and made his suit's alarms beep, but Jack moved quickly. He reached the door and used his tools to open it. Inside, the air smelled like smoke and metal. The alien girl was sitting on the floor, holding her arm. She tried to stand up but almost fell. Jack caught her gently. He spoke slowly, saying his name was Jack and he wanted to help. The girl answered with a soft voice. Her name was Lyra. Jack helped her move to the shuttle, closing the door behind them. He checked her arm and saw it was cut, but not badly. He cleaned the wound and wrapped it carefully. Lyra thanked him, her voice shaking. Jack gave her water and some of his food. Lyra ate slowly, watching Jack with wide eyes. She said she was from a far world and her people believed the gap was cursed. She had tried to cross it to prove the old stories were wrong, but her ship had been hit by an energy storm. She was sure she would die until Jack found her. Jack listened to Lyra's story. He told her about his own journey, about how no humans had ever tried to cross the gap before. He said he was just as scared as she was, but he wanted to help. Lyra smiled a little, her eyes bright with hope for the first time. As Jack worked on fixing the shuttle's controls, he explained how humans always wanted to know what was on the other side of a mystery. He said that was why he came here. Lyra listened closely, surprised by his bravery. She said her people avoided anything dangerous, but Jack's courage made her feel stronger. The energy waves outside grew wild again, making the shuttle rock back and forth. Jack checked the controls and saw they were drifting toward a storm. He worked quickly, adjusting the engines to keep them steady. Lyra helped him, following his directions and learning quickly. Jack was glad to have a friend now. They talked. While they worked, Jack asked about Lyra's world. She told him about green fields and tall blue trees, about cities made of glass and light. Jack told her about Earth, about green forests and oceans, and about the funny things humans like to do. Lyra laughed at some of his stories, and Jack felt happy for the first time since he entered the gap. Soon, the shuttle's engine started to make a strange noise. Jack checked and saw some parts had been damaged by the energy. He needed a special tool to fix it, but it was back on Lyra's ship. Jack and Lyra suited up again and went back to her ship together. It was risky, but they worked fast, grabbing the tool and a few other supplies. Jack fixed the shuttle's engine, and Lyra was able to get some of her favorite things, like a small blue stone from her home. After a few hours, the storm calmed. The shuttle was working well again. Jack looked at Lyra and said he wanted to try to cross the gap completely. Lyra was scared, but Jack told her he would not leave her alone. He said they could do it together. Lyra agreed, her eyes full of hope. Before they started, Jack sent a message to the Pioneer. He told Captain Emma that he was alive and had found a friend. He said he was going to try to cross the gap and would send messages if he could. He hoped she would understand and not be too angry. Lyra sent a message to her own people, hoping someone would hear it. Together, Jack and Lyra set a course for the other side of the gap. They checked all the systems and made sure they had enough food and air. Jack held the controls while Lyra watched the screens. Outside, the light changed again, turning green and gold. As they moved deeper, the energy storms grew stronger. The shuttle shook, and the screens showed new warnings. Jack and Lyra worked together, solving problems as they came. Sometimes they argued, but they always found a way to agree. They learned to trust each other. Inside the gap, time felt strange. Sometimes it seemed like days passed, sometimes just hours. Jack and Lyra told stories to keep each other calm. They listened to music from Jack's small player. Lyra liked the gentle songs the most. She sang some songs from her world, and Jack tried to learn the words. One night, as Jack tried to sleep, he heard Lyra crying softly. He sat next to her and listened as she talked about her family and her fears. Jack told her it was okay to be scared. He said he was scared too, but being brave meant doing the right thing even when you are afraid. Lyra smiled and held his hand. The next morning, the shuttle shook harder than ever. They saw a huge storm ahead, bigger than any before. Jack wanted to turn back, but Lyra pointed to a small opening in the storm. It looked dangerous, but it was their only chance. Jack trusted Lyra and aimed the shuttle for the gap. As they flew through the storm, the shuttle rocked and the lights flickered. Jack kept his eyes on the controls. Lyra helped by watching the sensors and telling Jack when to turn. It was the hardest thing they had ever done. Just when they thought they could not make it, the shuttle broke through the storm and floated into calm space. Jack and Lyra looked at each other in surprise. They had made it through another danger. They smiled, knowing they were stronger together than alone. Outside the window, the light changed again, showing new colors they had never seen before. Their journey was far from over, but Jack and Lyra knew they could face whatever came next as long as they helped each other. Jack woke up slowly as the shuttle drifted in the strange, bright mist inside the gap. At first, he did not remember where he was. He heard the soft humming of the engines, the beep of a control panel, and then he remembered everything. Lyra was sitting near the window, looking outside with wide eyes. She turned and smiled when she saw Jack was awake. The colors outside were different again, shining with blue, green, and silver light. Sometimes it looked like there were shapes moving just beyond what they could see. Jack wondered if it was just their imagination or if something really lived inside the gap. He got up, stretched his arms, and asked Lyra if she had seen anything strange. Lyra nodded and pointed at the window, saying that sometimes she thought she saw big shadows in the mist. But when she looked again, they were gone. Jack went to the controls and checked the readings. The shuttle was working well for now, but the energy outside was still strong. He was glad they had made it through the last storm, but he knew there could be more ahead. He and Lyra needed to keep moving if they wanted to find the way out. Lyra showed Jack something on her scanner. It was a strange signal, a pattern in the energy that did not match anything they had seen before. Jack listened carefully. The pattern was steady, almost like a heartbeat. It was coming from deeper inside the gap. Lyra said maybe it was a safe place, or maybe it was something important. Jack agreed they should check it out, but he wanted to be careful. They packed food and water into small bags in case something happened to the shuttle. Lyra put her blue stone in her pocket for good luck. Jack checked his tools, making sure he had everything he might need. They looked at each other, both feeling nervous but also ready. Jack set the shuttle to follow the strange signal, and they started moving forward. As they traveled, the space around them changed again. At first, it was quiet, almost peaceful, with soft lights and gentle waves of energy. Then, without warning, a sudden burst of lightning flashed across the front of the shuttle. The shuttle shook hard. Jack grabbed the controls, trying to keep the ship steady. Lyra checked the screens, calling out numbers and warnings. The energy storm was bigger than anything they had faced so far. Huge waves of color moved around them, and the shuttle bounced from side to side. Jack fought the controls, sweating and breathing hard. Lyra tried to help, pointing to safe paths between the bright flashes. They worked together, moving the shuttle through the wild storm. The storm lasted for a long time. Sometimes it felt like hours. Jack's arms hurt from holding the controls, and Lyra's voice was getting tired. But they did not give up. Finally, the lights outside grew softer and the shaking slowed down. Jack and Lyra let out a long breath. They had made it through the worst of the storm, They checked the shuttle for damage. The engines were still working, but some of the outside panels were burned. Jack did his best to fix the most important parts. Lyra helped, handing him tools and holding wires. They were tired, but they both felt proud. Each time they faced danger, they worked better together. After the storm, the strange signal was much stronger. Jack listened closely. Now he could hear? A new sound mixed in, a faint, low voice, almost like someone speaking from far away. He could not understand the words, but he felt sure it was calling them forward. Lyra agreed. She said maybe someone was trapped inside the gap, just like she had been. They followed the signal, moving slowly through the soft mist. Jack told Lyra about Earth, about how some people believed in signs and lucky numbers. Lyra said her people believed the gap was a place of bad luck, but now she was starting to think it was more than just a story. As they traveled, they saw more pieces of old ships floating in the mist. Some were small and broken, others were big and old, covered in strange markings. Jack wondered how many people and aliens had come here before them, trying to find the other side. He wondered if any had ever made it out. They came close to a large broken ship, bigger than anything Jack had seen so far. It looked like it had been here a long time. The outside was covered in strange symbols. Lyra said it looked like an ancient ship from her world, but much older than anything she had seen. Jack wanted to go inside and look for clues. They put on their spacesuits and floated over to the big ship. Inside it was dark and quiet. Jack's flashlight showed broken machines and empty halls. Lyra found a control panel and tried to turn it on, but nothing happened. Jack found a door that was stuck, and together they forced it open. Inside, they found old records written in a language neither of them knew. Jack took pictures with his small camera. Lyra took a strange metal box. That looked important. They moved slowly, looking for anything that could help them. At the end of the hall, they found a window looking out into the mist. Jack saw more shapes moving outside, some big and slow, others small and quick. It was a strange and lonely place. As they left the ancient ship, Jack felt a little sad. So many people had tried to cross the gap, but it seemed like most never made it. Still, he was glad he was not alone. He and Lyra went back to their shuttle, ready to keep moving. They followed the signal deeper into the gap. Suddenly, the scanner beeped with a warning. Something big was coming toward them. Jack and Lyra watched as a huge swirling shape came out of the mist. It looked like a living cloud, bright and shining. It moved slowly, but it was heading straight for the shuttle. Jack tried to steer away, but the cloud moved to block their path. Lyra said it was not alive like an animal, but maybe it was some kind of living energy. Jack did not know what to do. They could not go back, and they could not get past the cloud. Then Lyra remembered her blue stone. It was a special stone from her world, said to bring luck in dangerous places. She held it up to the window, and the blue light shone into the mist. The cloud stopped moving for a moment. Jack turned on the shuttle lights, shining them in the same direction. The cloud started to move again, but this time it turned away. Slowly, it drifted to the side and let them pass. Jack and Lyra looked at each other in surprise. Maybe the stories about lucky stones were true after all. After the cloud passed, the signal they were following grew even stronger. The scanner showed a point of light ahead, brighter than anything they had seen. Jack felt hope for the first time in a while. Maybe this was the way out. As they got closer, they saw something strange ahead. It was not another ship. It looked like a huge station floating in the mist. The walls were covered in lights and old markings. Jack guessed it was very old, maybe built by people or aliens who lived long before. They brought the shuttle close and found a place to dock. Jack and Lyra put on their suits again and went inside. The air was cold and thin, but it was safe to breathe. They walked down long halls filled with strange machines. Some were broken, but others still worked, humming softly. They found a big room in the center, full of old screens and controls. Lyra turned on the power, and the screens lit up. Jack saw pictures of the gap, drawings of energy storms and old ships. There were maps showing secret paths through the storms. There was a message on one of the screens, written in many languages. Lyra read it out loud. It said, "If you are lost, you are not alone. There is always hope." Jack felt a lump in his throat. He thought of all the people who had come here before, hoping to find something new. He looked at Lyra, and she smiled at him. They had come farther than anyone else. They had faced storms, danger, and fear, but they were still here together. They looked for a way to send a message to their friends. Jack found a working radio and tried to call the Pioneer. At first there was only static, but then he heard a faint voice. It was Captain Emma calling out for him. Jack shouted with happiness. He told her he was alive and that he had found something amazing. He promised he would try to find a way out. Lyra called her own people, hoping someone would hear her. They worked through the night trying to learn more from the old station. Jack found a map that showed a safe path through the gap. It would not be easy, but now they had hope. As they rested in the quiet room, Jack looked at Lyra and said he was glad he had come here, even if it was dangerous. Lyra said she was glad too. They had found a new friend, and together they were not afraid anymore. The journey was not over, but now they had a plan, and most of all, they had hope. Jack sat quietly in the control room of the old station, staring at the map on the bright screen. The lines and symbols showed a path through the gap, winding around dangerous energy storms and hidden traps. The old words on the map warned of many dangers, but they also showed safe places to rest along the way. Jack felt hope growing inside him. He knew the journey was not over, but at least now he and Lyra had a way forward. Lyra stood beside Jack, her hand resting on the blue stone in her pocket. She studied the map with him, her eyes shining with excitement and worry. She asked Jack if he really believed they could make it all the way through the gap and reach open space again. Jack smiled and said he believed they could as long as they helped each other. He said they had come this far by being brave, and that was not going to change now. They started getting ready to leave the old station. Jack checked their supplies again. They had enough food and water for a few more days. The shuttle's engines had been repaired, but he wanted to bring some extra parts from the station just in case something else broke. Lyra found some small tools and a power cell that could help recharge the shuttle systems. Together they packed everything carefully, making sure not to forget anything important. Before leaving, Jack looked around the control room one more time. He felt a little sad to leave the place. It had saved their lives and given them hope. He left a note on the table, written in simple words for anyone who might find the station in the future. He wrote that there was a path through the gap, and that it was possible to survive if you stayed brave and worked with friends. They returned to the shuttle and prepared to start the engines. Jack checked the controls while Lyra watched the screens for danger. The shuttle lifted off and floated away from the station. As they moved forward, the bright lights of the old place faded behind them, leaving only the mist and colors of the gap. The first part of the new path was quiet. The map showed a safe corridor, and the shuttle glided through soft blue light. Jack and Lyra relaxed a little, eating some food and telling stories to pass the time. Jack told Lyra about camping trips on Earth where people sat around a fire and watched the stars. Lyra laughed and said that on her world, people liked to tell stories under the light of 3 moons. She showed Jack a picture from her home, a place with purple grass and tall, shining trees. After a few hours, the warning lights on the shuttle started to flash. Jack looked at the map and saw they were nearing the edge of a dangerous storm. The path went around it, but it was narrow and tricky. Jack slowed the shuttle and asked Lyra to help him watch the sensors. Together, they guided the ship through the twisting path. The storm outside was wild, with flashes of green and white light. The shuttle rocked and shook, but Jack kept his hands steady on the controls. Lyra called out directions, telling him when to turn or speed up. For a long time, they moved through the narrow corridor, barely avoiding the edge of the storm. Jack felt sweat on his forehead, but he did not give up. Finally, the sensors showed they were past the worst of it. The shuttle drifted into a quiet place, filled with soft gold light. Jack and Lyra cheered and hugged each other, happy to be safe for now. They rested in the quiet space for a while. Jack checked the engines and fixed a small leak. Lyra cleaned the windows and organized their tools. They both felt tired, but they knew they had to keep moving. The map showed they were halfway through the gap, but the hardest part was still ahead. As they started moving again, the radio made a strange sound. At first it was just static, but then a voice came through. It was weak and far away, but Jack recognized it at once. It was Captain Emma calling from the Pioneer. Jack answered quickly, telling her he was alive and with a friend. He tried to explain what they had found, but the radio kept cutting in and out. Emma's voice was worried but also proud. She told Jack that the Pioneer was waiting at the edge of the gap. The crew was scared, but they were trying to understand what was happening. Emma said they had seen strange energy readings and some alien ships were nearby, watching the gap closely. She warned Jack to be careful and said she would try to keep the channel open as long as possible. Jack thanked her and promised to keep sending messages. Lyra sent a short message to her own people, hoping someone would hear it. She told them not to be afraid, that there was hope inside the gap, and that humans were not as reckless as everyone said. She said she had learned a lot from Jack, and hoped others would listen to her story one day. As they traveled deeper, the map showed another danger ahead. It was a giant field of broken ships and debris, swirling in a slow circle. The old words on the map called it the graveyard. Jack and Lyra knew they had to cross it to reach the last safe place before the exit. They entered the graveyard slowly, shining the shuttle's lights ahead. Pieces of ships floated everywhere, some spinning fast, others drifting slowly. Jack moved the shuttle carefully, weaving between the broken parts. Lyra watched the sensors, calling out warnings whenever something got too close. Suddenly, a piece of metal hit the side of the shuttle, making a loud bang. Jack checked the controls, but nothing was broken. They kept moving, hearts pounding in their chests. As they moved deeper, they saw a large ship stuck in the middle of the field. It was still powered, with weak lights shining from inside. Jack wanted to stop and see if anyone needed help. Lyra was scared, but she trusted Jack. They brought the shuttle close and looked inside the windows. They saw movement. Someone was still alive inside. Jack put on his spacesuit and went inside while Lyra waited at the controls. Inside, Jack found a young man in an alien uniform. The man was hurt, with a cut on his arm and a broken leg. Jack spoke softly, telling him he was here to help. The man did not speak Jack's language, but he understood the kind look in Jack's eyes. Jack helped the man into a small rescue chair and brought him back to the shuttle. Lyra helped take care of the wounded man. She cleaned his cuts and gave him water. Jack fixed a splint for his leg. The man looked scared at first, but then he saw how Jack and Lyra worked together. Slowly, he smiled and relaxed. They moved quickly, leaving the graveyard behind as soon as they could. Jack sent a message to Captain Emma, telling her about the rescue. Emma replied, saying the aliens' people were also waiting outside the gap. Jack and Lyra promised to bring the man back if they made it through. The last part of the journey was the hardest. The map showed a narrow tunnel of energy, twisting and turning. Outside, the storms grew louder, shaking the shuttle hard. Jack and Lyra worked together, holding the controls and watching the screens. The wounded man watched them, eyes wide with fear and hope. As they flew through the tunnel, the shuttle shook more and more. Jack worried the engines would stop, but the power cell Lyra had taken from the old station helped keep them running. Lyra whispered soft words, telling Jack to be brave, and Jack told her the same. Together, they pushed through the fear. After what felt like hours, the tunnel opened up into a calm, bright space. The sensors showed they were almost at the edge of the gap. Jack let out a loud cheer, and Lyra laughed with joy. The wounded man smiled too, tears in his eyes. Ahead, they saw the exit, the path out of the gap, shining with clear light. Jack set the course, and the shuttle moved forward, leaving the storms behind. As they reached the edge, they saw the Pioneer and several alien ships waiting outside. Jack called Captain Emma, and she answered at once, her voice full of relief. Lyra called her people, telling them they were safe. They had crossed the gap together, helped by hope, courage, and the strength of friendship as they floated toward their friends. Jack knew that nothing would ever be the same again. As the shuttle reached the edge of the gap, Jack looked out the window with wide eyes. He saw the Pioneer, their big home ship, floating in safe space. Around the Pioneer there were several other ships. Some looked human, but others were alien, painted with strange colors and symbols. All the ships waited in a silent circle, watching the gap with worry and hope. Lyra sat beside Jack, her hands shaking a little. She could not believe they had made it. The wounded alien man they rescued sat quietly, his eyes full of relief. Jack smiled at them and told them everything would be all right. He sent a message to Captain Emma, telling her they were almost home. Captain Emma answered right away, her voice excited and happy. She told Jack that everyone was waiting and that the alien ships wanted to know what happened inside the gap. As the shuttle moved closer, 2 small rescue ships came to guide them. Jack followed their lights, feeling safe for the first time in days. When they reached the Pioneer, the doors opened and crew members rushed to help. Jack and Lyra helped the wounded man onto a stretcher. The alien crew thanked them again and again, their eyes full of respect and wonder. Captain Emma met Jack and Lyra as soon as they left the shuttle. She hugged Jack tightly, tears in her eyes. She thanked Lyra for her bravery. Lyra smiled, feeling shy but proud. Emma told them the alien commanders wanted to speak with them right away. They had many questions about what Jack and Lyra had seen. The meeting took place in a large room on the Pioneer. The alien commanders sat at one end of a long table. Captain Emma and her officers sat on the other side. Jack and Lyra sat together in the middle, feeling a little nervous. The room was quiet as everyone waited for Jack to speak. Jack told the story of their journey through the gap. He explained the storms, the strange signals, and how they found the old station with the ancient map. Lyra added her own memories, telling the aliens about the old stories her people believed. She explained how she had thought the gap was cursed, but now she knew it was just a very dangerous place that needed respect and careful planning. The alien commanders listened closely. They looked at each other, their faces serious. One of them, an old alien named Zorak, spoke softly. He said his people had feared the gap for many generations. Now, after hearing Jack and Lyra's story, he was not sure what to believe. He asked to see the map from the ancient station. Jack handed over the device, and Zorak's eyes grew wide as he looked at the symbols and paths. Captain Emma told the aliens that humans and aliens could learn a lot from each other. She said maybe together they could find a way to make the gap safer for everyone. Zorak nodded slowly. He said the gap was still very dangerous, but now they had hope. He thanked Jack and Lyra for their bravery and for helping the wounded man. After the meeting, Jack and Lyra were given food and clean clothes. They sat together in the small kitchen, sharing a meal. Jack was very tired, but he felt happy. Lyra smiled at him, her eyes soft. She said she had never felt so safe with anyone before. Jack told her he was glad they had met. They talked quietly about their journey, about the strange things they had seen, and the hope they felt for the future. While they ate, Captain Emma called Jack to the command room. When he arrived, she showed him new readings on the screen. The gap was changing. The storms inside were growing even stronger. The energy levels were rising, and strange signals kept coming from the old station. Emma said she was worried that something inside the gap was waking up or breaking down. If the storms grew worse, the gap could spread and become even more dangerous to ships in the future. Emma said she had an idea, but it was risky. She wanted to use the ancient knowledge Jack and Lyra found to seal the gap forever. She explained that if they could use special devices from the station and place them in the right spots inside the gap, they might be able to collapse the energy fields and close the gap for good, but it would be dangerous. Someone would have to go back inside one last time. Jack listened quietly. He knew it would not be easy, but he also knew it was the right thing to do. He said he would go back into the gap and place the devices. Lyra stepped forward and said she would help. Captain Emma agreed, saying she would support them with the Pioneer from outside the gap. Zorak and the other aliens promised to help as while sending their own small ships to guide and protect Jack and Lyra. The next day, Jack and Lyra got ready for their mission. Engineers from both the Pioneer and the alien ships helped prepare a new shuttle, stronger than the old one. They loaded the special devices from the ancient station and packed extra food, water, and tools. Lyra wore her blue stone for luck, and Jack smiled when he saw it. Before they left, the wounded alien man came to see them. His leg was in a cast, but he smiled and gave Jack a small silver charm. He said it was a gift of thanks from his people. Lyra hugged the man gently and wished him a safe trip home. Jack and Lyra climbed into the shuttle. Captain Emma's voice came over the radio, wishing them luck and promising to watch for their signal. Zorak's voice followed, telling them to be careful and to remember they were not alone. The shuttle entered the gap once more. Jack felt his heart beating fast, but he did not let fear control him. He checked the map again and watched the energy fields. Lyra worked the controls beside him, her eyes sharp and focused. The journey was hard, but now they knew the way. The energy storms were stronger this time. Bright flashes of light hit the shuttle, shaking it hard. Jack and Lyra worked together, dodging dangers and moving quickly. At last they reached the places where the special devices needed to be placed. Jack put on his suit, took one of the devices, and floated out of the shuttle. Lyra guided him with her voice, helping him place each device in the right spot. They did this again and again, each time working faster as the gap grew more unstable. As they finished placing the last device, the old station sent out a loud warning signal. The energy around them began to change, swirling faster and faster. Jack hurried back to the shuttle. Lyra was waiting, her face full of worry and hope. They started the engines and raced toward the exit. Behind them, the gap began to close. Storms clashed and bright colors twisted together, making the shuttle shake. Jack held the controls steady, his hands sweating. Lyra whispered, telling him they were almost there. Suddenly, the radio came alive with Captain Emma's voice. She shouted for them to hurry. Zorak's voice followed, guiding them to the safe path. Jack pushed the engines harder than ever before. The shuttle shook, alarms screamed, and the world outside was filled with light. Then, with a sudden burst of speed, they shot out of the gap and into open space. Behind them, the gap closed with a soft flash, leaving only quiet and dark sky. Jack and Lyra looked at each other and laughed, tears of relief running down their faces. The Pioneer and the alien ships rushed to meet them. Everyone cheered when Jack and Lyra returned. Captain Emma hugged them both and thanked them for their bravery. Zorak came forward, his face full of respect. He said that because of Jack and Lyra, his people and the humans would always remember what was possible when they worked together. That night, the crew held a big celebration on the Pioneer. Jack and Lyra sat side by side, watching the stars outside the window. They did not speak much. Words were not needed. They both knew their lives and maybe the whole galaxy had changed forever. The celebrations on the Pioneer went on for many hours. Everyone on the crew felt happy and safe for the first time in a long while. People from the alien ships joined them too, bringing special food and small gifts to share with the humans. Music played in the dining hall, and stories about the gap and the brave journey of Jack and Lyra were told again and again. Jack did not feel like a hero. He felt tired, but he was proud of what he and Lyra had done. After the party, Jack walked through the quiet halls of the Pioneer. He wanted to be alone for a little while and think about everything that had happened. He passed the window and stopped to look at the stars. The gap was gone now. Where there had been storms and strange lights, there was only peaceful dark space. Jack wondered if anyone would ever know how much courage it took to jump into the unknown. Lyra found Jack by the window. She stood beside him and watched the stars. She told Jack that her people would never forget his bravery. She said she was glad they had met, and she felt strong because she had helped save many lives. Jack told her that he could not have done anything without her. They smiled at each other, both understanding that this adventure had changed them forever. The next morning, Captain Emma called a meeting with Jack, Lyra, Zorak, and some of the other leaders from the alien ships. They sat around a round table in the main planning room. Captain Emma thanked everyone for their help. She explained that, with the gap now closed, the galaxy would be safer for all people. There would be no more lost ships or strange storms to fear. Everyone agreed that this was a good thing. Rak, the old alien commander, stood up to speak. He said that for many generations his people had been afraid of the gap. They had told stories to scare their children so they would never go near it. Now, he said, things had changed. Because of Jack and Lyra, they saw that humans and aliens could work together and trust each other. Zarek promised to tell his whole world about what happened. He wanted to make peace with the humans and learn more about them. Jack listened and felt a warm pride inside. He knew there were still many problems in the galaxy, but now there was also hope. He thought about all the brave people who had come before him and about those who would come after. He hoped they would remember that courage and friendship could solve even the hardest problems. After the meeting, life on the Pioneer slowly returned to normal. The crew fixed broken machines, cleaned the halls, and planned for their next mission. Lyra spent more time with the humans, learning their language and teaching them about her own world. Sometimes she laughed at their jokes or sang old songs from her home. The human crew loved her gentle voice and kind ways. Jack worked in the engine room again. He liked fixing things, but now he felt different. He had seen so much inside the gap that he could never forget. Sometimes, when he looked at the tools in his hands, he remembered the strange colors and the old station floating in the mist. He thought about the message they had found there: if you are lost, you are not alone. Jack knew he would never forget those words. One day, Captain Emma called Jack and Lyra to her office. She told them that messages were coming in from all over the galaxy. Ships were traveling safely again, and people were grateful for what Jack and Lyra had done. Some wanted to meet the heroes who had crossed the gap. Others wanted to know more about the ancient station and the lost technology. Emma asked if Jack and Lyra would like to help teach new explorers about safety and courage. Jack said yes at once. He liked the idea of helping others avoid the same dangers he had faced. Lyra agreed too. She wanted to make sure that people remembered the lessons they had learned. Together, they started writing a guide for crossing strange parts of space. They put all their best advice in simple words: always help your friends, be careful but brave, and never give up hope. As the days passed, Jack and Lyra became close friends. They shared stories, hopes, and dreams. Sometimes they walked together under the stars, talking about what they would do next. Jack asked Lyra if she wanted to visit Earth one day. She said she did. She wanted to see the blue oceans and green forests Jack had told her about. Jack promised to show her everything. One morning, a small group of students from another ship visited the Pioneer. They wanted to hear the story of the gap from Jack and Lyra themselves. Jack smiled and sat with them, telling them in simple words how he had shut his eyes and jumped into the unknown. He explained how he had been afraid, but he had gone anyway, because someone needed his help. Lyra told her side of the story too, explaining how she learned to trust Jack and to believe in herself. The students listened with wide eyes. One young boy asked if he could be brave like Jack one day. Jack nodded and told him that bravery was not about being unafraid. It was about doing what is right, even when you are scared. Lyra added that working together with others made everything possible. The students thanked them, promising to remember what they had learned. Time moved on. The Pioneer and the alien ships traveled together for a while, sharing knowledge and helping repair each other's systems. Jack and Lyra helped lead many small missions, always careful and always watching out for each other. Sometimes they sent messages to Zarak and his people, who were working on new ways to help all travelers in space. Jack and Lyra became famous in a quiet way. Their names were spoken with respect among humans and aliens. Sometimes, when a new ship passed by, the captain would send a message to thank them. Jack did not care much about being a hero, but he was happy to know that others were safe because of what he and Lyra had done. One night, as the Pioneer drifted through peaceful space, Jack and Lyra sat in the observation room, looking out at the stars. The room was quiet except for the gentle hum of the engines. Lyra said she was still amazed by how far they had come. Jack agreed. He said he used to think he was just a simple engineer, but now he knew that one small act of courage could change everything. They talked about the old station in the Gap. Jack wondered who had built it and what their lives had been like. Lyra said maybe one day together they could explore other mysteries in the galaxy. Jack liked that idea. He said he was ready for more adventures as long as he had a friend like Lyra by his side. Soon, the Pioneer prepared to head for a new system. Jack and Lyra stood with Captain Emma and the rest of the crew, ready for the next mission. As the ship moved forward, leaving the memory of the Gap behind, Jack looked at Lyra and smiled. He knew that no matter where they went, they would face each new challenge with hope and courage. The story of Jack and Lyra and the journey through the Gap became a legend among humans and aliens. It was told for many years as a story about friendship, trust, and the power of doing what no one else dared to do. People remembered that one human had shut his eyes and jumped through the Gap, a feat no alien ever attempted, and in doing so, he had shown the whole galaxy what was possible. Jack and Lyra watched the stars, knowing that their journey was just beginning. Together they were ready for whatever came next.